People of God, before the noise of this world tries to define your day, I need you to settle your spirit and hear this truth: God is your refuge and your strength. That means safety is not something you are searching for. It is something you are already standing in. When the ground feels unstable and systems begin to shake, you are not left exposed because you are anchored in a God who does not move. The psalmist declares that God is a very present help in trouble, not a distant option and not a last resort. He is present right now in this moment, in your uncertainty, in your questions, and in your waiting. Even when the earth gives way and the mountains seem to fall into the sea, you remain secure because your confidence is not in what you see, but in who surrounds you. Hear this clearly: storms do not cancel God's protection, and chaos does not weaken his authority. God is your strong tower, which means when pressure rises, you rise above it. When fear tries to rush in, you have a place to run. You are not running away from problems. You are running into strength. You are not hiding in weakness. You are dwelling in divine power. If this word is ministering to your spirit, I want you to respond with faith. Like this video and subscribe to the channel for daily prayer, because staying connected keeps your spirit fortified. Write amen in the comments as a declaration that God is your refuge, and comment one thing you are believing God for today, because faith spoken positions heaven to move. Now step into this day without panic and without fear. Be still and know that he is God. He will be exalted above the turmoil, exalted above the opposition, exalted above every challenge confronting you. You are covered, you are defended, and you are secure, because the God who is your refuge remains unshaken and fully in control. When the psalmist declares that God is your refuge and a very present help in trouble, it is a revelation meant to settle the soul before it strengthens the spirit. A refuge is not a place you search for in panic. It is a place already prepared before trouble arrives. It is safety that exists ahead of crisis, protection that predates pressure. To say that God is your refuge is to say that your life is not exposed, not vulnerable, and not left to chance even when circumstances feel overwhelming. You are surrounded by divine security that does not depend on conditions being calm in order to function. God being a present help means he is not distant, delayed, or disengaged. He is not watching from afar, waiting to see how things unfold. He is present in the tension, present in the uncertainty, present in the shaking. His presence is not symbolic. It is active. He does not merely observe trouble. He steps into it with authority. This presence reassures the heart that no matter how intense the moment becomes, God has not stepped away, withdrawn, or turned his attention elsewhere. Trouble has a way of making people feel isolated, as though they are carrying weight alone. But Scripture corrects that perception by declaring God as a very present help. That means he is closer than fear suggests and more involved than emotions reveal. When trouble arises suddenly, God is already there. When pressure escalates quickly, God remains steady. There is no gap between the moment you recognize trouble and the moment God responds, because his presence was already established. A refuge implies covering. It implies shelter. It implies a place where the effects of the storm are felt less intensely. God does not always remove trouble immediately, but he reduces its power to harm you. You may feel the wind, but you are shielded from destruction. You may hear the noise, but you are protected from collapse. Refuge does not deny the storm, it limits its impact. Being a present help also means God understands the specifics of your trouble. He is not responding generically. He knows what kind of pressure you are under, where it touches you most deeply, and how it affects your mind, body, and spirit. His help is customized, not generic. He brings strength where you are weakest, peace where anxiety is loudest, clarity where confusion tries to dominate. There is comfort in knowing that God does not require you to be strong before he helps you. He does not wait for composure or faith to be perfectly formed. He enters the moment as it is. When you are overwhelmed, he is present. When you are unsure, he is present. When you are exhausted, he is present. His help does not depend on your ability to hold yourself together. Refuge also implies permission to rest. It is a place where striving stops and trust begins. When God is your refuge, you do not have to solve everything immediately. You are allowed to pause, breathe, and lean into his strength. Refuge is where the soul recovers, where the heart slows down, where fear loses its grip, because safety has been established. God being a present help challenges the belief that help is always delayed. Sometimes people equate silence with absence, but silence does not mean God is not present. Often, His presence is expressed through stability rather than noise. He calms rather than rushes. He steadies rather than reacts. His help may not always look dramatic, but it is always effective. Trouble comes in many forms. Some trouble is external, visible, and loud. Other trouble is internal, silent, and deeply personal. God is present in both. He is present in the crisis that others see and the struggle that no one knows about. He is present in public battles and private fears. There is no category of trouble that places you outside the reach of his help. Refuge also means protection from being overwhelmed by emotion. Trouble often brings fear, anxiety, and confusion. God's presence stabilizes the inner life so that emotions do not run unchecked. He guards the mind from spiraling and the heart from collapsing. Even when the situation remains unresolved, your inner world can remain secure. God as a present help also means you are not required to face trouble with uncertainty about outcome. While you may not know how things will unfold, you know who is involved. Confidence shifts from outcome-based hope to presence-based trust. You trust not because you see resolution, but because you know God is with you. Refuge implies that access is immediate. You do not need permission to enter. You do not need qualification to receive protection. God does not place conditions on when you can run to him. In moments of panic, fear, or confusion, refuge is already available. His presence is not earned, it is given. God's help being present also speaks to timing. He does not arrive too late. He does not miss critical moments. He is present at the point of decision, the moment of pressure, the height of uncertainty. Even when you feel as though things escalated too quickly, God's presence did not lag behind. There are times when God's help shows up as strength to endure rather than immediate escape. He fortifies the soul so that you can stand without breaking. He stabilizes your footing so you are not swept away. Refuge does not always mean removal. Sometimes it means reinforcement. God as refuge also means identity is preserved in trouble. Pressure has a way of redefining people, shrinking them or causing them to react out of fear. God's presence protects who you are. It keeps you from becoming hardened, bitter, or defeated. You may be in trouble, but trouble does not define you. The phrase very present help suggests nearness that can be felt even if not always understood. Sometimes help is experienced as peace that makes no sense. Sometimes it is clarity that arrives unexpectedly. Sometimes it is calm in the middle of chaos. These are signs of divine presence at work. Refuge also means safety from ultimate harm. Trouble may touch you, but it will not consume you. It may challenge you, but it will not destroy you. God's presence draws a line that trouble cannot cross. There are limits to what is allowed to affect you because refuge establishes boundaries. God does not become your refuge only after trouble arrives. He is your refuge before it ever begins. His presence surrounds your life continuously. Trouble may interrupt your plans, but it does not interrupt God's care. His help is not activated by crisis. It is already active. Being present also means God is emotionally attentive. He is not indifferent to your pain. He is not unmoved by your tears. He is not unaware of your frustration. His presence includes compassion and understanding and care. He does not minimize what you feel. He meets you in it. Refuge is also a place of perspective. Inside refuge, fear is quieter and truth is louder. You begin to see trouble in proportion to God's power rather than in proportion to your strength. Perspective shifts, and with it, peace begins to rise. God's help being present does not mean trouble instantly disappears, but it does mean you are not facing it unsupported. You are strengthened in ways that may not be obvious immediately, but become evident over time. You endure what you thought you could not endure because help was present. There are moments when God's help comes through people, provision, or unexpected support. But the source remains his presence. Even when he uses instruments, he remains the refuge behind them. Your trust is not misplaced because it is anchored in him, not in the method of help. Refuge also speaks to intimacy. You do not hide in refuge. You dwell in it. God's presence invites closeness, not distance. In trouble, prayer becomes more honest, dependence becomes deeper, and awareness of God becomes more personal. God being present in trouble also means growth is taking place. Pressure refines awareness, deepens faith, and strengthens trust. God does not waste the moment. His presence ensures that even difficult seasons contribute to maturity rather than damage. Trouble often creates urgency, but refuge creates patience. God slows the internal response so that panic does not dictate decisions. His presence stabilizes reactions so that wisdom can function even under pressure. Refuge is where you remember who God is. In trouble, distractions fall away and essentials become clear. God's presence refocuses the heart on what truly matters. Fear loses authority because trust is restored. God as a present help means there is no situation where you are truly alone. Even when others misunderstand, withdraw, or cannot assist, his presence remains constant. He does not leave when things become complicated. Refuge also includes reassurance that trouble is temporary. While it may feel consuming, it is not permanent. God's presence anchors you in the truth that seasons change, challenges pass, and his faithfulness remains. There are moments when refuge is experienced quietly, without words, without explanation. A deep sense of calm settles, even though circumstances remain unresolved. This calm is not denial, it is divine presence stabilizing the soul. God being a very present help means his attention is focused. He is not distracted by the size of the world or the number of needs. He is fully aware of what concerns you personally. His presence is not diluted. Refuge also means God stands between you and despair. He blocks hopelessness from taking root. He preserves your ability to believe, to hope, to expect. Even when answers are delayed, faith is protected. God's presence in trouble also restores dignity. Trouble can make people feel powerless or small. God's refuge reminds you that you are valued, seen, and supported. You are not reduced by difficulty. Being present means God is involved in the process, not just the outcome. He walks with you through the steps, through the waiting, through the uncertainty. You are not rushed through pain. You are carried through it. Refuge allows you to be honest without fear of rejection. God does not require you to pretend strength you do not feel. His presence welcomes vulnerability. You can rest in him as you are. God's help being present also means he knows when to speak and when to be silent. Sometimes guidance comes clearly. Other times, peace comes instead. Both are expressions of help. Refuge is a place where the soul regains equilibrium. Fear settles. Breathing slows. Thoughts become ordered. This internal stabilization is often the first sign of God's present help. God remains present not only at the beginning of trouble, but throughout its duration. He does not arrive and leave. He stays. His presence is sustained. There is a quiet confidence that emerges when you know God is your refuge. You may still face uncertainty, but you are not frantic. You may still have questions, but you are not destabilized. God's presence in trouble teaches you trust that extends beyond the moment. Each experience of refuge builds confidence for the future. You remember that you were not abandoned before, and you will not be abandoned again. Refuge also means you are allowed to stop fighting internally. You release the need to control everything. You rest in the assurance that God is involved. God as a present help means your life is supervised even in crisis. Nothing is spiraling out of divine awareness. Even when events feel chaotic, they are not unmanaged. Trouble does not have the authority to define the end of your story. God's presence ensures continuity. What you are facing now is part of a larger narrative that God is overseeing. Refuge is where faith is reinforced, not diminished. Even when answers are not immediate, trust deepens. Confidence grows not from circumstances improving, but from presence remaining. God's help being present also means his power is accessible. You are not cut off from divine strength. You draw from him even while pressure exists. There is safety in knowing that God does not minimize your trouble. He acknowledges it while remaining greater than it. His presence validates your experience while providing strength to endure. Refuge is not escape from reality. It is engagement with reality under divine covering. You face what is real without being overwhelmed by it. God remains present in the aftermath of trouble as well. He heals what was affected, restores what was shaken, and strengthens what was tested. Refuge allows you to remain yourself even in difficulty. You do not lose compassion, humility, or faith. God's presence protects your character. Being a present help also means God's wisdom is available. Decisions made under pressure are guided by his insight rather than fear. God's refuge is consistent. It does not weaken when trouble intensifies. It does not collapse under pressure. It remains firm. There is reassurance in knowing that God's presence does not depend on your awareness. Even when you feel disconnected, he remains present. Refuge creates space for healing. Emotional wounds, spiritual fatigue, and mental strain are addressed gently over time under his care. God as a present help means you are never left to navigate uncertainty without guidance. Even when the path is unclear, presence provides direction. Refuge is where fear loses its power because safety is established. You may still acknowledge fear, but it no longer controls you. God's presence in trouble confirms that your life matters to him. He does not abandon what he values. There is steadiness that comes from knowing God is near. It anchors you when everything else feels unstable. Refuge allows you to endure without becoming hardened. You remain soft, teachable, and open even in difficulty. God's present help assures you that trouble will not have the final word. His presence guarantees continuity beyond the moment. Refuge is where the soul remembers hope. Even when circumstances remain unresolved, hope is preserved. God's presence in trouble teaches you reliance. You learn that strength comes from Him, not from your own effort. Refuge also means protection from despair. God guards your inner life carefully. Being present means God is attentive to timing. He knows when to act, when to wait, when to strengthen, and when to restore. Refuge creates an environment where peace can exist alongside unresolved issues. God's help being present ensures that you are supported emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. There is confidence in knowing that God does not abandon you to figure things out alone. Refuge becomes familiar over time. You learn how to return quickly, how to rest deeply, how to trust fully. God remains present not only to help you survive trouble, but to shape you through it. Refuge is where faith matures quietly, without pressure, without performance. God's presence assures you that even when trouble disrupts plans, it does not disrupt purpose. Refuge gives you permission to slow down, breathe, and trust. God's help being present means you are not behind, forgotten, or overlooked. Refuge allows you to remain grounded while life is shaking. God's presence provides stability that cannot be taken away by circumstances. Refuge is not fragile. It does not collapse under pressure. God remains present even when outcomes are uncertain. Refuge keeps you anchored in truth rather than fear. God's help being present confirms that you are cared for deeply and consistently. Refuge is where strength is renewed quietly. God's presence ensures that trouble does not isolate you from hope. Refuge allows you to face reality without being consumed by it. God remains present through every phase of trouble. Refuge is where the soul finds steadiness again. God's help being present is the assurance that you are not alone now. Not alone in what you face, not alone in what you feel, not alone in what you fear, not alone in what you endure, but surrounded, held, covered, sustained, and supported by a God who remains your refuge and a very present help in trouble. When Scripture declares that God is your strength when the world is shaking, it is revealing a stabilizing truth meant to quiet the inner life before it empowers the outward one. Shaking is a part of life. Systems shift, relationships change, plans collapse, and certainty dissolves. The world around you does not remain fixed, and when what once felt secure begins to tremble, it exposes how fragile human strength can be. In those moments, God does not ask you to become stronger on your own. He reveals Himself as the strength that holds you steady. God as strength means He becomes the sustaining force when your own capacity reaches its limit. Strength here is not merely physical endurance or emotional resilience. It is divine reinforcement. It is power that flows into weakness. It is stability that enters instability. It is calm that settles chaos. When the ground beneath you feels unreliable, God becomes the solid foundation beneath your soul. Shaking has a way of unsettling identity. When familiar structures fall, people often begin to question who they are, where they belong, and what they can rely on. God as strength anchors identity during instability. He reminds you that who you are is not determined by what is shifting around you. Titles may change, roles may evolve, environments may collapse, but God's strength preserves the core of who you are. When the world is shaking, fear tries to accelerate the heart and scatter the mind. God's strength counters fear by slowing you down internally. It steadies breathing, calms racing thoughts, and restores clarity. Strength does not always manifest as forceful action. Sometimes it shows up as the ability to remain still, composed, and grounded while everything else feels unsettled. God's strength is not borrowed. It is inherent. He does not need to draw from another source to sustain you. His power does not diminish under pressure. While human strength fatigues with prolonged strain, divine strength remains constant. When you lean into God as strength, you are drawing from something that does not run out, does not weaken, and does not collapse under weight. Shaking often exposes hidden dependencies. When certain supports are removed, it becomes clear what you were leaning on. God allows shaking not to harm you, but to redirect reliance. He reveals Himself as the only source that remains stable when everything else proves temporary. His strength becomes evident not only because He supports you, but because other supports fail. God as strength also means He fortifies you from the inside out. He does not always change external circumstances immediately, but He changes how you stand within them. You discover an ability to endure conversations that once overwhelmed you, decisions that once paralyzed you, and uncertainty that once destabilized you. This endurance is not self-generated. It is God reinforcing your inner life. When the world shakes, urgency tries to dominate. Pressure pushes for quick decisions, reactive choices, and emotional responses. God's strength slows reaction time so wisdom can surface. He strengthens restraint. He strengthens discernment. He strengthens patience. This kind of strength protects you from making decisions that would compound instability. God's strength also guards perspective. Shaking can magnify problems until they appear larger than reality. Strength from God restores proportion. You begin to see challenges in relation to his power rather than in relation to your fear. Perspective stabilizes emotion, and stability allows faith to function. There are moments when shaking is loud and public, and moments when it is quiet and internal. God's strength meets both. He strengthens you when loss is visible and when grief is hidden. He supports you when pressure is external and when conflict is internal. There is no form of shaking that places you outside the reach of his sustaining power. God's strength does not deny pain. It does not minimize difficulty. It acknowledges reality while providing the capacity to endure it. Strength allows you to face what is real without being crushed by it. You do not have to pretend the shaking is not happening. You are empowered to remain standing while it does. When the world is shaking, comparisons often intensify. You may look at others who seem unaffected and question your own resilience. God's strength removes the need for comparison. He strengthens you according to your assignment, your season, and your capacity. He does not measure you against others. He meets you where you are. God's strength also manifests as consistency. When everything else feels unpredictable, his presence remains stable. This consistency becomes an anchor for the soul. You may not know what tomorrow holds, but you know what God holds. That knowledge becomes strength. Shaking can also disrupt routines and rhythms that once provided stability. God's strength establishes new rhythms. He teaches you how to function without relying on old patterns that no longer serve the season. Strength adapts. It does not cling to what was, it equips you for what is. God's strength also means he empowers you to carry responsibility without being consumed by it. Pressure often increases during times of shaking. Expectations rise. Demands multiply. God strengthens you so that responsibility does not become a burden that breaks you. He distributes weight so it becomes manageable. There are moments when strength is experienced as courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it. God's strength enables obedience when clarity is incomplete. You take steps without full visibility because his strength supports the movement. Shaking often reveals what cannot be controlled. God's strength teaches surrender. It strengthens trust rather than control. You learn to release what you cannot manage and rely on what God can. This release is not weakness, it is strength aligned with wisdom. God's strength is also restorative. Shaking can drain energy, motivation, and hope. God restores what was depleted. He renews enthusiasm, revives vision, and replenishes emotional reserves. Restoration is not always immediate, but it is intentional. When the world shakes, memories of past failures or losses can resurface. God's strength keeps you anchored in the present rather than trapped in past pain. He strengthens your ability to stay here now without being overwhelmed by what was. God's strength also protects faith. Shaking can challenge belief, introduce doubt, and raise questions. God does not rebuke questions. He strengthens trust through them. Faith becomes more resilient because it has been tested, not destroyed. There are times when God's strength shows up as silence rather than answers. Silence does not mean absence. Sometimes strength is imparted without explanation. Peace settles even when questions remain. This peace is strength working quietly. God strengthens you to remain compassionate during shaking. Pressure can harden the heart. God's strength preserves tenderness. You remain kind even when stressed, patient even when uncertain, generous even when resources feel threatened. God's strength also means he upholds you when you feel like you might fall apart. There are moments when you feel you are barely holding on, unaware that you are actually being held. His strength compensates where yours ends. Shaking can disrupt confidence. God's strength restores self-trust rooted in him. You remember that your capability is not isolated, it is supported. You are not operating alone. God's strength also equips you to speak wisely during shaking. Words spoken under pressure can either stabilize or escalate. God strengthens discernment so speech becomes measured, calm, and purposeful. There are seasons when strength is needed not to advance, but to remain, to stay where you are without retreating into fear. God provides that strength. Staying can be as courageous as moving. God's strength does not rush the process of stabilization. He allows time for adjustment. He understands that shaking disorients. His strength supports gradual reorientation. When the world shakes, plans may need revision. God's strength enables flexibility without panic. You adapt without losing direction. Strength makes adjustment possible. God's strength also guards against despair. Shaking can tempt hopelessness. God infuses hope quietly, reminding you that instability is not the end of the story. Strength from God is not noisy. It does not announce itself. It is felt in endurance, consistency, and calm. Others may not see the internal reinforcement taking place, but its effects become evident over time. God strengthens your resolve. You do not abandon what matters because circumstances are unstable. You remain committed to values, faith, and purpose. Shaking often strips away illusions of control. God's strength fills the space left behind. You are not weakened by surrender, you are strengthened by trust. God's strength also enables you to support others without losing yourself. During collective shaking, people lean on one another. God strengthens you so that support does not become depletion. There are moments when God's strength comes through rest. He restores through stillness. He rebuilds through quiet. Strength does not always require action. God strengthens memory. You remember past deliverance. You recall times you were sustained before. This memory reinforces present trust. When the world shakes, God's strength keeps you from internalizing chaos. External instability does not become internal disorder. God's strength also anchors emotions. You still feel, but feelings do not dominate decisions. There are times when shaking is prolonged. God's strength sustains long-term endurance. You are supported not just for a moment, but for the duration. God strengthens hope without demanding certainty. You hope even when outcomes are unclear. God's strength also renews purpose. Shaking clarifies what matters. Strength aligns focus. There are moments when God's strength shows up as reassurance rather than resolution. You are reminded you are not alone. God strengthens courage to trust again after disappointment. God's strength also guards against bitterness. You process pain without allowing it to define you. Shaking can challenge patience. God strengthens the ability to wait without frustration. God's strength keeps you grounded when emotions rise. God strengthens identity so that circumstances do not redefine you. God's strength also allows you to acknowledge weakness without shame. Shaking exposes limits. God's strength fills gaps. God strengthens perspective so you see beyond the immediate moment. God's strength is faithful. It does not fluctuate with circumstances. God strengthens quietly, steadily, consistently. When the world shakes, God remains unshaken. His strength becomes the place you stand. You do not have to hold everything together. God holds you together. His strength is sufficient. His presence stabilizes. His power sustains. His faithfulness anchors. When everything around you is moving, shifting, trembling, and uncertain, God remains your strength, steadying your soul, reinforcing your spirit, sustaining your heart, grounding your mind, holding your life in place while the world shakes, ensuring that you remain standing, supported, upheld, stabilized, reinforced, strengthened, and secure within Him. When Scripture declares that you are secure even in chaos and uncertainty, it speaks to a dimension of faith that transcends circumstance. Chaos is the absence of order, the collision of unpredictability and instability. Uncertainty is the absence of clarity, the space where answers are delayed and outcomes are unknown. Together, they create an environment where fear often thrives. Yet the word affirms that security does not come from order being restored first, nor from answers arriving quickly, but from God remaining present and sovereign in the midst of disorder and unanswered questions. Security in God does not mean chaos disappears immediately. It means chaos loses its power to dominate your inner life. The external environment may remain unsettled, but your internal world becomes anchored. This is a deep form of stability, one that does not depend on circumstances behaving well. It is the kind of security that allows you to breathe evenly while everything around you feels unstable, because your sense of safety is rooted in God rather than in predictability. Uncertainty challenges the human need for control. When outcomes are unclear, the mind searches for certainty, often replaying scenarios, imagining worst-case outcomes, and attempting to prepare for every possibility. God-given security quiets that mental unrest. It does not provide all the answers, but it provides peace that guards the mind from spiraling. You learn that you do not need to know everything in order to trust the one who does. Chaos often disrupts familiar structures. Systems fail, plans unravel, routines break down. These disruptions can feel threatening because they remove what once felt reliable. Security in God reminds you that while structures may shift, His presence does not. What is eternal remains untouched by what is temporary. This awareness becomes a stabilizing force. reminding you that your life is held by something greater than the systems around you. Being secure in uncertainty does not mean you feel no emotion. You may still feel concern, sadness, or apprehension. Security does not eliminate feeling, it regulates it. Emotions no longer control decisions or define reality. They are acknowledged without being given authority. This emotional balance is a sign of divine security at work. Chaos often amplifies noise. Opinions multiply. Information conflicts and voices compete for attention. Security in God sharpens discernment. You become less reactive to every report and more attentive to what truly matters. You learn to filter noise through faith rather than through fear. Stillness becomes possible even when the world is loud. Uncertainty tests trust. When you cannot see the path ahead, trust is no longer theoretical. It becomes practical. Security in God enables you to move forward without full visibility. You take the next step not because you are confident in the path, but because you are confident in the guide. This kind of trust grows slowly and deeply, strengthening over time. Chaos can make people feel exposed and vulnerable. Security in God provides covering. You are reminded that even when circumstances are unpredictable, you are not unprotected. There are boundaries around your life that chaos cannot cross without divine permission. This understanding does not remove difficulty, but it limits its reach. Uncertainty often invites comparison. You may look at others who seem unaffected or more prepared and question your own stability. Security in God dissolves comparison by grounding you in your own journey. You recognize that everyone navigates uncertainty differently and that your security is not measured against another's response. Chaos can disrupt identity. When roles shift or plans collapse, people may question who they are without what they relied on. Security in God preserves identity beyond circumstance. You remember that who you are is not defined by stability, success, or certainty, but by relationship with God. Uncertainty also challenges patience. Waiting without clarity can feel exhausting. Security in God strengthens patience by reframing waiting as purposeful rather than passive. You begin to trust that time is not being wasted, even when progress feels slow. Chaos can create urgency that pressures quick decisions. Security in God allows space for wisdom. You do not rush simply to escape discomfort. You wait for clarity without fear that delay equals failure. This calm decision-making protects you from choices driven by panic. Being secure in chaos means your faith is no longer conditional. You do not require everything to be in place before trusting God. You trust Him in the middle of the mess. This kind of faith matures belief beyond ideal conditions. Uncertainty often brings questions. Security in God does not demand immediate answers. It allows questions to exist without destabilizing trust. You learn that faith and questions can coexist. Doubt is not given control. Trust remains foundational. Chaos can affect the body as well as the mind. Stress tightens muscles, disrupts sleep, and drains energy. Security in God brings physical calm. Rest becomes possible even when circumstances are unresolved. Your body responds to the assurance that you are safe. Uncertainty can isolate. People may withdraw, unsure how to engage when answers are lacking. Security in God reminds you that you are not alone. Divine presence remains constant even when human connection feels strained. Chaos may challenge optimism. It can feel difficult to expect good when things are unstable. Security in God anchors hope not in circumstances improving, but in God's character remaining faithful. Hope becomes resilient rather than fragile. Uncertainty often reveals hidden fears. Security in God brings those fears into the light gently. Without condemnation, you become aware of what you truly trust and where trust needs to deepen. This awareness becomes an invitation to growth. Chaos does not follow predictable timelines. Security in God removes pressure to resolve everything quickly. You accept that some seasons require endurance rather than immediate resolution. This acceptance brings peace. Uncertainty can disrupt prayer. Words may feel inadequate. Security in God assures you that prayer is not measured by eloquence. Even silence is understood. Presence replaces performance. Chaos often tests consistency. When routines break, spiritual habits may feel harder to maintain. Security in God sustains connection even when patterns change. Relationship remains even when routine shifts. Uncertainty can challenge gratitude. It is harder to give thanks when outcomes are unclear. Security in God nurtures gratitude rooted in presence rather than circumstance. You find reasons to be thankful even in instability. Chaos can magnify weaknesses. Security in God removes shame from weakness. You learn that vulnerability does not disqualify you from stability. God meets you in limitation. Uncertainty often brings a sense of loss. Security in God allows you to grieve without losing hope. You acknowledge what has changed while trusting what remains. Chaos can create tension between faith and realism. Security in God integrates both. You face reality honestly without surrendering trust. Uncertainty may tempt withdrawal. Security in God encourages engagement without fear. You remain present in your life rather than retreating into avoidance. Chaos can make the future feel threatening. Security in God reframes the future as supervised rather than unknown. You trust that what is ahead is already known by God. Uncertainty tests endurance. Security in God provides strength to continue even when motivation fluctuates. You keep moving not by force, but by faith. Chaos often disrupts expectations. Security in God teaches flexibility. You adapt without losing purpose. Uncertainty can challenge joy. Security in God allows joy to exist quietly without denying difficulty. Joy becomes deeper, less dependent on circumstances. Chaos may provoke control. Security in God invites surrender. You release what you cannot manage and rest in what God can. Uncertainty can strain relationships. Security in God brings patience and grace into interactions. You respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. Chaos can blur priorities. Security in God clarifies what matters. Essentials become clear as distractions fall away. Uncertainty may affect confidence. Security in God restores confidence rooted in Him rather than in certainty. Chaos can exhaust emotional reserves. Security in God replenishes through peace rather than pressure. Uncertainty often tests commitment. Security in God strengthens resolve to remain faithful even when outcomes are unclear. Chaos can distort perspective. Security in God restores balance, helping you see beyond the immediate moment. Uncertainty can awaken fear of loss. Security in God assures you that what is truly meant for you is preserved. Chaos may challenge trust in others. Security in God stabilizes trust by grounding it in Him first. Uncertainty can make silence uncomfortable. Security in God makes silence a place of rest rather than anxiety. Chaos often brings change. Security in God ensures change does not dismantle faith. Uncertainty may require courage. Security in God supplies quiet courage to face each day. Chaos can feel overwhelming. Security in God makes it manageable. Uncertainty tests surrender. Security in God makes surrender safe. Chaos can feel endless. Security in God reminds you that seasons pass. Uncertainty challenges certainty. Security in God becomes certainty. Chaos may affect clarity. Security in God brings peace without clarity. Uncertainty can feel lonely. Security in God brings companionship. Chaos can weaken resolve. Security in God strengthens it. Uncertainty may linger. Security in God remains. Chaos does not cancel care. Uncertainty does not remove protection. Security in God is not fragile. It does not collapse under pressure. It does not disappear when answers delay. It does not weaken when chaos intensifies. It remains steady, quiet, deep, and sustaining. You are held even when things are shaking. You are covered even when outcomes are unclear. You are safe even when paths are uncertain. You are secure even in chaos and uncertainty, anchored, supported, steadied, and preserved by a God whose presence does not depend on order, whose faithfulness does not fluctuate with clarity, and whose care surrounds you fully, consistently, and faithfully as you move through moments of instability without losing your footing, your peace, or your trust. When Scripture declares that God is your strong tower and place of safety, it is revealing a truth meant to reposition the soul from vulnerability to assurance. A strong tower is not a hiding place built out of fear. It is a place of confidence constructed from strength. In ancient times, a strong tower was elevated, fortified, and immovable. It provided perspective, protection, and security all at once. To say that God is your strong tower is to say that your safety is not fragile, not temporary, and not dependent on conditions being favorable. A strong tower is elevated, which means it lifts you above what threatens you. When pressure surrounds you at ground level, God elevates your perspective. You may still be aware of danger, but you are no longer overwhelmed by it. From this elevated position, fear loses its dominance because clarity replaces panic. You see more clearly, think more calmly, and respond more wisely. God as a strong tower means there is a place you can run to without hesitation. Refuge is not distant. Safety is not delayed. Access is immediate. You do not need permission to enter. In moments when emotions rise and thoughts scatter, God remains accessible. Running to Him is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is recognizing that safety is found not in self-preservation, but in divine protection. A strong tower is fortified. It is built to withstand impact. God's protection is not thin or symbolic, it is resilient. Trouble may knock, pressure may push, and opposition may intensify, but the tower does not collapse. You may feel the tremors, but you are not crushed by them. God's strength absorbs what would otherwise harm you. God as your place of safety also means there is rest available even when danger exists. Safety does not require the absence of threat, it requires the presence of protection. You can rest not because everything is resolved, but because you are secured. This rest is not denial, it is trust. It allows your nervous system to settle, your thoughts to slow, and your heart to regain balance. A strong tower offers perspective. From within it, you are not consumed by what is happening outside. You observe without being overwhelmed. God gives you the ability to see situations accurately rather than emotionally. Perspective guards you from exaggerating danger and underestimating his power. God as a strong tower also implies permanence. Towers are not built for temporary use. They are designed to stand over time. God's protection does not expire with seasons. It does not weaken with prolonged difficulty. His safety is not seasonal, it is constant. A place of safety is where identity is preserved. Under pressure, people often change in unhealthy ways. Fear can harden hearts, distort values, and provoke reactions that do not reflect true character. God's safety protects who you are. You do not lose compassion, integrity, or faith while under his covering. God as a strong tower means that safety is not self-generated. You do not have to create your own defenses or build walls out of fear. You do not need to isolate yourself emotionally or spiritually. God provides safety without requiring withdrawal from life. A strong tower is visible. It stands as a declaration of strength. God's presence in your life becomes a visible source of stability. Others may not understand why you remain calm, why you do not panic, or why you are not overwhelmed. That calm is not ignorance. It is safety anchored in God. God as your place of safety also means he regulates exposure. Not everything that threatens others is allowed to reach you. There are limits placed on what can touch your life. God sets boundaries that danger cannot cross without permission. This does not eliminate challenge, but it restricts its impact. A strong tower is entered intentionally. You choose to run to it. God invites you to participate in safety through trust. You are not forced into refuge. You are invited. Each time you turn to him instead of fear, you step deeper into protection. God's safety also includes emotional shelter. He guards your heart from becoming overwhelmed by anxiety. He protects your mind from spiraling thoughts. He creates space for emotional recovery even when circumstances are demanding. A place of safety is where clarity returns. In the middle of chaos, confusion often clouds judgment. God's presence restores clarity so decisions are made wisely rather than reactively. Safety stabilizes thought patterns. God as a strong tower also means there is height to your faith. You rise above immediate threat and see beyond the present moment. This elevation does not remove awareness. It removes panic. A strong tower is built before danger arrives. God's safety is proactive, not reactive. He is not scrambling to protect you. He already has. His covering predates the threat. God's safety does not mean avoidance of difficulty. It means preservation through difficulty. You may pass through pressure, but you are not consumed by it. You are shielded even while engaged. A place of safety allows you to breathe. Anxiety restricts breath, tightens the chest, and accelerates the heart. God's safety brings calm to the body. Peace settles physically as well as spiritually. God as a strong tower also means you are protected from internal collapse. Even if external systems fail, your inner life remains intact. Faith remains stable. Hope remains alive. Safety in God also allows vulnerability. You do not need to pretend strength you do not feel. God's presence holds you as you are. You are safe to be honest. A strong tower offers strategic advantage. From within it, you are not merely surviving, you are positioned. God's safety gives you insight, timing, and discernment. You respond rather than react. God as your place of safety means fear does not dictate movement. You are not paralyzed. You move with intention, not panic. Safety enables forward motion without recklessness. A strong tower is guarded. God actively defends what he protects. He watches over your mind, heart, and future. Safety is maintained, not neglected. God's safety also guards relationships. Under pressure, relationships often strain. God protects you from responding in ways that damage connection unnecessarily. A place of safety is where healing occurs. Wounds exposed in danger are tended in safety. God uses his presence to restore what was shaken. God as a strong tower means your confidence is anchored in him, not in circumstances. You are not secure because everything is stable. You are secure because he is. Safety in God also brings patience. You are not rushing to escape discomfort. You wait with confidence rather than anxiety. A strong tower does not move with the storm. God remains unshaken. His stability becomes yours. God as your place of safety also means you are protected from despair. Hope is preserved even when outcomes are unclear. Safety allows you to remain generous, kind, and open-hearted even in difficult seasons. A strong tower is a place of refuge during battle. God does not remove you from conflict prematurely. He shelters you while you face it. God's safety is not noisy. It does not announce itself. It is experienced as calm in chaos, steadiness in uncertainty. A place of safety allows reflection. You gain insight while protected from immediate threat. God as a strong tower also means you are not alone. His presence fills the space where fear tries to grow. Safety in God removes the pressure to control everything. You rest knowing He is guarding what concerns you. A strong tower is reliable. It does not collapse under prolonged stress. God's safety guards your future. What is ahead of you is not exposed. A place of safety gives you time. Time to think, pray, and respond wisely. God as a strong tower also protects purpose. Your assignment is preserved. Safety does not isolate you, it strengthens you. God's safety is personal. It is tailored to your life, your season, your needs. A strong tower remains when other shelters fail. God's presence does not withdraw when danger intensifies. Safety allows trust to deepen. God as a place of safety steadies your emotions. Safety preserves faith during trials. A strong tower gives confidence without arrogance. God's safety invites rest without complacency. Safety in God allows clarity without haste. God's protection is intentional. Safety is not fragile. God remains present. The tower stands. You are covered. You are guarded. You are secure. God is your strong tower in place of safety, immovable, elevated, fortified, surrounding you with protection that does not weaken, shielding your heart, steadying your mind, preserving your faith, anchoring your life in a place where fear cannot dominate, where chaos cannot overtake, where uncertainty cannot destroy, where peace is established, where strength is reinforced, where trust is sustained, where your soul remains calm and your spirit remains anchored within the unwavering security of His presence. When Scripture invites you to be still and know that God is sovereign, it is calling you into a posture that is both spiritual and deeply personal. Stillness is not inactivity. It is intentional surrender. It is the decision to cease striving internally even when circumstances remain active externally. To be still is to quiet the urge to control outcomes, to silence the fear-driven need to fix everything immediately, and to rest in the assurance that God is governing what you cannot manage. Stillness begins in the mind. Thoughts often race when pressure rises. Worries multiply, questions surface, and imagination fills gaps with fear. Being still means allowing God to interrupt that mental noise. It is permitting peace to override panic. You may not receive answers instantly, but your thoughts are brought into order. Calm replaces chaos in the inner life. To know that God is sovereign is to recognize that authority does not belong to circumstance. Events may appear unpredictable, but they are not unmanaged. Sovereignty means God reigns above systems, above crises, above outcomes. He is not reacting to events, He is overseeing them. Knowing this shifts your posture from anxiety to trust. Stillness does not deny reality. It acknowledges what is happening without allowing it to dominate your emotions. You are aware, but not overwhelmed. You are informed, but not consumed. Stillness creates space for discernment so that truth can be separated from fear. Knowing God's sovereignty requires humility. It acknowledges limits. It admits that human understanding is partial. This humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. It recognizes that peace comes not from knowing everything, but from trusting the one who does. Stillness often feels uncomfortable at first because it confronts the habit of constant motion. Many people equate movement with progress. Yet God teaches that some breakthroughs occur not through action, but through surrender. Stillness is an act of faith, declaring that God is at work even when you are not moving. To be still also means releasing urgency. Urgency often masquerades as responsibility, but it is frequently rooted in fear. Stillness removes the pressure to rush decisions. It allows time for clarity to emerge. God's sovereignty is not threatened by waiting. Knowing God is sovereign reframes uncertainty. What you cannot predict, God already sees. What you cannot control, God already governs. This knowledge anchors the soul. You rest not because everything is resolved, but because everything is supervised. Stillness allows emotions to settle. Anxiety tightens the body and clouds judgment. Stillness brings physical calm. Breathing slows. Muscles relax. The nervous system responds to the assurance of safety. Peace is not merely spiritual, it is embodied. To be still is also to listen. In silence, awareness sharpens. You become more attentive to God's guidance. Noise diminishes. Insight surfaces gently. God often speaks in ways that require quiet to be heard. Knowing God's sovereignty protects you from despair. When outcomes seem uncertain or delayed, sovereignty assures you that nothing is wasted. Even difficulty serves a purpose. Even delay has meaning. God weaves all things together with intention. Stillness does not mean passivity. It is not disengagement from responsibility. It is alignment before action. You pause to realign with truth before proceeding. This alignment prevents reactionary decisions that create further instability. Being still also challenges pride. It confronts the belief that everything depends on you. Sovereignty reminds you that while your choices matter, ultimate control does not rest on your shoulders. This realization brings relief. Knowing God is sovereign stabilizes faith. Faith is no longer dependent on circumstances improving. It is rooted in God's unchanging nature. Even when situations fluctuate, trust remains steady. Stillness allows grief to be processed. When loss occurs, activity can become avoidance. Stillness creates space to feel, to mourn, and to heal under God's care. Sovereignty assures you that even loss is held within divine compassion. To be still is to stop arguing internally with reality. Resistance creates tension. Acceptance creates peace. Acceptance does not mean agreement with hardship. It means trusting God within it. Knowing God's sovereignty brings patience. You are not rushed by timelines imposed by fear. You wait with expectation rather than frustration. Waiting becomes active trust. Stillness also restores focus. Distraction often increases during uncertainty. Stillness centers attention on what matters most. Priorities clarify, essentials come into view. Being still requires courage. It takes courage to stop striving, to release control, and to trust this courage is rewarded with peace that cannot be manufactured. Knowing God is sovereign guards against comparison. You are not threatened by others' progress. You trust that God's plan for you unfolds uniquely and purposefully. Stillness strengthens prayer. Prayer becomes less about asking and more about aligning. Silence becomes communication. Presence becomes sufficient. To be still is to acknowledge God's authority over outcomes. You do what you can and you trust God with what you cannot. This balance prevents burnout. Knowing God's sovereignty stabilizes identity. You are not defined by success or failure. Your worth is not tied to outcomes. You are secure in who God says you are. Stillness also guards relationships. When emotions are regulated, communication becomes healthier. You respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Being still allows healing to occur. Healing often requires rest. God uses stillness to restore what stress has depleted. Knowing God is sovereign also brings gratitude. You begin to notice what remains steady rather than focusing solely on what is uncertain. Gratitude shifts perspective. Stillness creates room for trust to deepen. Trust grows not in constant motion, but in quiet assurance. To be still is to acknowledge that God is at work beyond your awareness. He operates in ways unseen. Stillness honors that hidden work. Knowing God's sovereignty protects against fear of the future. The future is not unknown to God. It is already within His knowledge and care. Stillness allows wisdom to emerge. Wisdom is often drowned out by urgency. Quiet creates space for insight. Being still also involves letting go of outcomes. Attachment to specific results can create anxiety. Sovereignty invites you to trust God's purposes over your preferences. Knowing God is sovereign brings stability during transition. When old structures fall and new ones are not yet formed, stillness becomes an anchor. Stillness does not mean silence forever. It means silence before movement. It prepares you for action that is aligned and purposeful. Being still guards against emotional exhaustion. Constant striving depletes energy. Rest renews strength. Knowing God's sovereignty assures you that no situation is beyond redemption. Even brokenness can be restored. Stillness allows faith to mature. It moves beyond needing constant reassurance. Faith becomes confident trust. Being still is an act of worship. It acknowledges God's supremacy and sufficiency. Knowing God is sovereign also brings freedom. You are freed from the burden of trying to control everything. Stillness invites peace to govern thoughts. Peace becomes the filter through which decisions are made. Being still allows truth to settle deeply. Truth heard in stillness anchors the soul. Knowing God's sovereignty transforms fear into reverence. Fear loses power when God's greatness is recognized. Stillness creates margin for reflection, prayer, and renewal. Being still protects against impulsive reactions. You choose response over reaction. Knowing God is sovereign reassures you that delays are not denials. Timing is intentional. Stillness allows hope to remain alive even when answers are delayed. Being still cultivates endurance. You remain steady over time. Knowing God's sovereignty anchors you during storms. Storms do not define you. Stillness invites trust without conditions. Being still brings clarity without force. Knowing God is sovereign quiets the heart. Stillness allows God's presence to be felt. Being still restores balance. Knowing God's sovereignty steadies the soul. Stillness is where peace takes root. Knowing God is sovereign is where confidence is renewed. Being still is not giving up, it is handing over. Knowing God's sovereignty brings rest. Stillness aligns you with truth. Being still allows strength to rise. Knowing God is sovereign grounds you. Stillness makes space for God. Being still calms fear. Knowing God's sovereignty assures care. Stillness invites trust. Being still is faith in action. Knowing God is sovereign is peace realized. Stillness remains. God reigns. He is sovereign. And in that sovereignty, your heart finds rest. Your mind finds calm. Your spirit finds assurance. And your life remains anchored in the unshakable truth that even when the world is loud and circumstances are uncertain, God remains in control, reigning with wisdom, power, and faithfulness that never wavers, never weakens, never fails, inviting you to rest confidently in his authority as you remain still and know that he is God, beloved. As you come to the close of this time of prayer, let your spirit remain settled in the truth that God is in control. You do not have to rush back into worry or pick up the weight you laid down. What you entrusted to God remains safely in his hands. Carry this stillness with you into the rest of your day. Let it shape how you think, how you speak, and how you respond. You are not moving forward in fear, but in faith, trusting that God is governing what concerns you. If your heart feels lighter, it is because peace has been released. Guard that peace. Do not allow urgency, noise, or pressure to steal what God has established in your spirit during this moment. Remember that being still does not mean you are inactive. It means you are aligned. From alignment comes clarity, and from clarity comes wise action at the right time. As you step into your responsibilities, remain confident that God is working beyond what you can see. Even when nothing seems to be changing outwardly, heaven is active on your behalf. If this prayer ministered to you, like the video and subscribe to the channel for daily prayer and encouragement. Staying connected keeps your faith strengthened and your focus aligned with truth. Take a moment to seal this prayer with faith. Write Amen in the comments as a declaration that you trust God's sovereignty, and comment one thing you are believing God for today as an act of expectation. Move through the rest of this day without anxiety. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are exactly where God can reach you. Let peace govern your heart, wisdom guide your decisions, and trust steady your steps. What God is overseeing does not require your fear to function. Go forward in quiet confidence, knowing that the God who reigns above all remains faithful, attentive, and fully in control of your life.